behind the scenes, the real people of this world have been acting constructively, and it's a good day for conservatives. Hello everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today we are talking about how conservatives across the world are winning, right? It's been a tough year, it's been a tough several years, even with Trump in the White House, right? Because, the liberals still own the media, right? It's this communist program that's always blasting out over the airwaves, and it can be very tiresome with a drag queen story hour and, every single movie and TV show having half of its characters be LGBTQIA+++. Right? It definitely grinds the gears, it wears down the soul, but, behind the scenes, the real people of this world have been acting constructively, and it's a good day for conservatives. And, just going to go over a few stories, going to go over more of the things found in the IG report by Inspector General Michael Horowitz. Going to look at some of the headlines today, basically from the trade deal, USMCA, the trade deal with China, and the elections in the UK. So here we go. Basically, first, USMCA. This is, I'm going to do another video talking about USMCA. There's some things in this trade agreement that are very dubious, but in general, it appears to be an improvement over NAFTA. And, basically, in very raw form, it's just a victory for Trump. This is one of his major diplomatic, achievements, and it was just basically waiting in the wings, sitting. It had already been approved by the different relevant parties in Canada and Mexico, and the committees in Congress. But it was basically the do-nothing Democrats. Since they took the House in 2018, they have literally done nothing. They had a resolution on the Green New Deal, which they didn't even show up for. They condemned racism and prejudice, whatever that means for the House of Representatives. I guess they acknowledged the Armenian genocide when Turkey started invading Syria again, which is, I guess, I'll give them some snaps for that one. But for the most part, they've done absolutely nothing except just basically rail against Trump and go for impeachment, right? The Mueller report was a complete and utter dud, unless you're just a brain-dead acolyte of Rachel Maddow. And, there's nothing to be said as far as victories for Democrats today, right? This is all 100% on Trump. Impeachment be damned, right? The impeachment has solidified his victory. There is absolutely no way he is losing as a result of their path that they've taken. And it's funny because Nancy Pelosi, Space Panther and I were just talking about this, like, what happened? Like, Nancy Pelosi was against this. She was holding back the tide of the commies in her own party because she knew in real politics sense that going that far out on a limb and, trying to impeach the president would alienate the middle voters of the country, right? And sure enough, that's what we've seen, is that it's completely alienated the voters who are key to winning the Electoral College, right? Again, nobody gives a damn about the popular vote. How you win the presidency is through the Electoral College. And if that irritates you, then, well, too bad. Anyway, so yeah, basically don't need to read this one, but basically, again, I'm going to go into this in more detail. Again, some things in here that are very dubious, but definitely a victory for Trump. And, in general, should be positive for the U.S. economy. And then there's the China trade deal, which, we've been in this headline cycle with the China trade deal, right? Apparently, they said they have agreed to a phase 1 deal like 3 months ago, and then it's basically just kind of been back and forth. But now I guess they've agreed to postpone the December 15th tariff implementation, and this is also just good news for Trump. China's in a very rough spot with its economy. The sanctions and the tariffs have worked out very well at slowing down their economy. And so but domestically, politically, they need a win here as well, as does Trump. So basically, and again, they prefer Trump to the Democrat, right? They've even said that, as much as Trump is bombastic and, boorish at times, he still is very real. He tells you what he wants. He's very upfront about the United States and its interests. Whereas with Obama and all the previous presidents, it was couched in all this meaningless, fluffy, pseudo-diplomatic language, right? And so, even if they don't Trump's aggression towards them, they still appreciate his honesty and forthrightness. So, basically it's they're kind of working with Trump. If unless Trump were to go, super hard on them and just throw, way more tariffs at them, right? They're looking to kind of, play the game and, not look weak. And just like Trump doesn't want to look weak, so they're playing this game, but it appears they've come to a trade deal. This is another major victory for Trump going into 2020. And hopefully should give some more tailwinds to the economy, which, we've been in the longest running bull market in American history now. Of course, a lot of that is due to monetary policy. Monetary policy from the Federal Reserve is going absolutely crazy right now. I'll do another video about that. But for now, basically just showing that the China trade deal is complete in phase one. Another major victory for Trump going into 2020. And our good friends over in jolly old England have had a wonderful election, right? It was between the commies of the Labor Department, led by Jeremy Corbyn, who came out with a platform which was basically full-on communism, nationalizing energy and media and transportation. I'm not 100%. I wasn't following this super closely, but I saw the platform. It's basically like a full-on commie platform, like old school socialism. And they were counting on a bunch of young voters showing up and just being real excited about socialism. And it didn't happen. What they ended up happening was the working class came out for the Conservative Party more than they ever have in an entire generation. This is the biggest Conservative majority since Margaret Thatcher, which was basically before I and Space Panther were born. So this is the largest Conservative majority in the UK in our lifetime. And on top of that, basically, what I am personally excited about is Scottish National Party also had a very good night. They now have 48 seats out of, I think, the 60 or so seats in Scotland, which is setting it up for a constitutional showdown for a potential revote for Scottish independence, right? And on top of that, Sinn Féin, which is the Irish Nationalist Party, had a good showing in Northern Ireland, which means that the largest position in my lifetime as well is in place for the Northern Irish to reunify with Ireland proper. And maybe they'd object to me saying Ireland proper. But in any case, it's so not only do we have the largest Conservative majority in the UK in a generation, we also are in a position where Scotland and Ireland are in the greatest position for their independence, greater sovereignty that I've seen in my life. So this is, in real terms, it's hard for me to imagine how I could be more excited about this. Again, it's the UK, it's not the United States, but you shouldn't see these as completely separate and irrelevant to the United States political demeanor, right? In this, internet world, the narratives across the world are very synonymous, and the conservatives in the UK, right, the Labour and the Liberals, they think that they need the EU and all that socialism, right? But Boris Johnson and the Conservatives are like, to hell with all that. We'll make a trade deal that works for us with them, but in the meantime, there's Trump's USA across the pond, and, we can do an amazing trade deal with them and boost our economy in addition to getting more sovereignty. So it looks like Brexit will be fulfilled with this comfortable majority for the Conservatives. And that will be done, what they're saying, by the end of January, by January 31st. So that's wonderful. I mean, I've been cheering this on since the Brexit vote occurred. This is absolutely part and parcel with the Italian referendum as well as the election of Donald Trump in 2016. And how very interesting, as I've pointed out, that these are the three sites of the Triple Crown, right, of Washington, D.C., the City of London, and the Vatican, right? These are the three seats of power in the Triple Crown. And we have seen very, very interesting political movements in those three surrounding countries, right? Because those cities are not the same as the countries in which they reside. And when we see populist movements in the United States, the UK, and Italy, basically we're moving forward and closer to the end game, which is a total revolution of this planet and return of sovereignty and power to the people. That's what I'm aiming for, and that's what I think is going to happen as long as we keep pushing it forward towards that end. And Jeremy Corbyn just got obliterated, and even the person who was supposedly going to replace Corbyn was voted out of her seat. So the left party in the UK has been absolutely destroyed. You can see the scatter plot here showing that basically the cities and towns with the largest number of working class voters came out and voted hard for conservatives. The colors are flipped over there. Blue is conservative, red is liberal. And you can see that basically they had a very, very good showing. And it wasn't just all about Brexit. The Conservatives made it about Brexit, which, of course, is kind of what it's all about. They had this election mainly to settle which way they would go forward with Boris Johnson's Brexit and leaving the European Union, or basically, potentially if Corbyn won and the left won, they were, jimmying for a second referendum and potentially negate the entire process, which would have been very sad. But you can see that basically everyone except for the commies, basically their greatest fear of a Labour government was Jeremy Corbyn being prime minister, right? So this is very interesting as a bellwether for U.S. politics going into 2020, because what do we have? We have the radical left has taken over the Democratic Party. You see that with the impeachment. Pelosi, who was very reticent to go forward with such a ridiculous, politically impotent move of impeachment, especially because, as everyone knows, the Senate is held by the red team, the Republicans, and there's no way that Trump is getting removed from office. But so yes, the left has taken over the Democratic Party in the United States, and it appears all but inevitable that some sort of progressive will kick Joe Biden out of the way. I don't think Pete Buttigieg is going to be the nominee. It's hard to imagine that Joe Biden makes it. I don't really know who the nominee is going to be. I think one of the articles I read a couple of videos ago is very, very true, that we could be facing a hung convention in the Democrats. Basically, that they don't have a nominee. They have 4 or so, finalists, and then basically the final decision will be some horse trading among the delegates for those, 4 or so candidates. And that's just all good for Trump, too. So, yeah, basically, Corbyn out on his ass, the leftists in the UK completely out on their ass, and this is exactly what is going to happen in 2020. The leftists are going to be out on their ass, and it's a beautiful thing. They especially the swing states, we can see, as I covered, and a lot of people have covered, that basically the impeachment was the exact marker when the swing states, basically, the edge was lost for the Democrats, and the edge is now in Trump's hands. And some of them are big swings, 20 points or so. So people are done with the bullshit. They don't care about impeachment. They don't care about Russia. They don't care about Ukraine. They care about their kids going to good schools. They care about having good jobs, and basically having a country that they can be proud of, that's not filled with communist trannies, just running everything into the ground. So, old Bojo, I like this guy. I know that a lot of the Brits don't like him, but he's a good guy. So anyway, yeah, that's the UK election. Very good, pretty much as good as could be. And it's, again, from my mind, this is a very good bellwether for the US elections in 2020. That they thought they had it all by taking the House and the majority there. They've done nothing except try and go for impeachment. How funny would it be if they just lost it by an even larger margin in 2020? And the only thing they could point to having done is impeaching the president, which, of course, did nothing. And they did it on no basis whatsoever. So essentially, they wasted 2 years of our time and theirs, and they should be voted out. And basically the USMCA, it's almost like the Democrats approved that just to say that they did something apart from impeachment. But anyway, we'll close it out with the 5 bombshells in the Horowitz report. And yes, I know a commenter, a long-term viewer said, maybe you should stop reading Zero Hedge so much or share from other sources. And I will, but as far as Zero Hedge is the most reliable news aggregation on the internet that I'm aware of, and I'll look for other sources, but until I have evidence that Zero Hedge is operating in bad faith, I think they're doing a fantastic job, and I'll use them as the default if I like. But I do appreciate the feedback, and no big deal, no worries. Anyways, here we go. 5 bombshells in Horowitz report. The dinosaur media is still not reporting the bombshells contained in Horowitz report. Number 1. FBI officials were repeatedly informed by the CIA that Trump campaign advisor Carter Page had worked as a CIA asset. Specifically, Page was tasked by the CIA to investigate Russians. Yet the FBI repeatedly told the FISA court that Page was conspiring with Russians, i.e. the Russians the CIA had tasked Page to speak with. and a senior FBI lawyer, who Horowitz notes was, quote, the primary FBI attorney assigned to the bogus Trump-Russia investigation in early 2017, changed an email in which the CIA sent the FBI saying that Carter Page did work for the CIA to instead say that Page did not work for the CIA. It's about as big a change as you can get. That's a complete 180, and they want to say that's just a minor detail. That is not a minor detail, and that is the entire predication of the whole investigation, was that Carter Page was working with the Russians. But they neglected to mention, because they fraudulently falsified evidence, their attorney did, saying that he wasn't a CIA source when in fact he was. Continuing on to number 2, the government started spying on Carter Page and George Papadopoulos before they joined the Trump campaign and after. Why did they start spying on Papadopoulos before he joined the Trump campaign? Well, before he joined Team Trump, he worked for Republican presidential candidate Ben Carson. He also was an energy expert, and he pissed off a lot of people when he helped push through a pipeline that cut out people with their hands in other cookie jars. So Obama's intelligence agencies may have been spying a lot on different Republican campaigns, Trump, Carson, etc. Or they may have been spying on people threatening powers that be in the pipeline business. The same folks were also spying on General Michael Flynn in 2015. Why? Well, we're sure it had nothing to do with the fact that General Flynn announced he was going to look into all the corruption in the U.S. intelligence agencies and clean them up, or that Flynn had said that the U.S. basically created ISIS. Number 3. Both Page and Papadopoulos were recorded by FBI assets, cough, spies, cough, adamantly denying they were colluding with Russia. But the FBI hid their exculpatory comments from the FISA court. For example, Papadopoulos told the spies who tried to frame him, such as Australia's Alexander Downer and American Stephen Halper, that colluding with Russians would be treason, and that neither he nor anyone else with the Trump campaign would ever do such a thing. But the FBI buried that statement. Number 4. Contrary to what the talking heads have insisted for years, the FBI's spying application, or FISA warrant applications, did rest almost entirely on the Steele dossier. The Steele dossier, in turn, was literally based on barroom ramblings by drunk Ruskies and other assorted hodgepodge of shady characters. The FBI didn't really try to corroborate the Steele dossier at first, but when the FBI finally did interview the main Russian source for the Steele dossier, he said no, the info was not reliable, and he was shocked that Steele peddled it as confirmed. The still unidentified primary subsource later repudiated the information, telling the FBI that Steele misstated or exaggerated what the subsource had told him. For example, it turns out that Steele's incendiary accusation of Trump's alleged sexual activities in a Moscow hotel was nothing more than unconfirmed rumor and speculation. The subsource said they were comments made in jest. Some joke. Imagine that Trump getting peed on by Russian prostitutes was a joke. Who could have believed it? It's like the same thing with Trump saying, oh, Russia, if you've got Hillary's emails, we want to see them, like he said at a campaign event when he was during the 2016 campaign. And they're still talking about that as if that was like a serious request to Vladimir Putin to release the hacked emails. These people are so stupid. And again, it's no surprise that the younger generation is just literally pointing and laughing and going for people like Nick Fuentes, and waking up to this whole reality, getting red-pilled hardcore because, these boomers with their dumb talking heads on the media are basically just, they're past the point of absurdity. I literally have heard people who have severe mental diseases make more sense than what these people are saying on the TV at this point. Right. Anyway, continuing. The subsource insisted that he never expected Steele to put the statements in his reports or present them as facts. Instead, he specifically warned Steele there was no proof whatsoever because it was just talk. The subsource further explained that he was passing along word of mouth and hearsay and conversations that he had with friends over beers. It was described as multiple layers of hearsay upon hearsay. After Trump was elected, both the FBI and Steele were desperate to verify anything in the dossier because the Bureau had falsely sworn to the FISA court in October 2016 that its application information was already verified. The IG report details how Steele pleaded with his subsource to find corroboration. That person tried, but could find none. 0. Oh, and the FBI exaggerated Steele's prior track record and buried his supervisor's criticism about his reliability. and the alleged confirming secondary sources, which the FBI and CIA claimed corroborated the info in the Steele dossier, were really just Steele himself gossiping to the media while being paid by the Democrats to talk to media, and Brennan, Clapper, and McCabe themselves spreading myths to the media. And that one we covered in the previous video, that essentially Steele was being paid by the Democrats to leak to the media, and that Michael Isikoff Yahoo News article was supposedly the confirming corroborative source to the Steele dossier. It was literally the same information. They were paying him to release it. This thing is beyond a joke. It is so ridiculous. The fact that any of these boomers believe this shit is just like, is just beyond the pale and just hilarious and retarded. What are you gonna say at this point? Just point and laugh, right? Thank God at least we have the Horowitz report, and I can only imagine what Durham is going to come out with. Anyway, continuing. Number 5. Normally, a political campaign would be briefed on a counterintelligence campaign affecting them. The FBI claimed they didn't tell the Trump team that they were engaging in counterintelligence spying operation because that would have tipped off the Russians. Specifically, former Counterintelligence Division Assistant Director Priestap, the FBI official who approved the launch of Crossfire Hurricane, told the IG that he considered whether the FBI should conduct defensive briefings for the Trump campaign, but ultimately decided that providing such briefings created the risk that if someone on the Trump campaign was engaged with the Russians, he or she would very likely change his or her tactics and or otherwise seek to cover up his or her activities, thereby preventing us from finding the truth. There's just two wee problems with that claim. First, Attorney General Barr said that Obama and his CIA Director Brennan directly told the Russians about this. And what... quote, and what I find particularly inexplicable is that they talked to the Russians, but not to the presidential campaign. On August 4th, Brennan braced the head of Russian intelligence. He calls the head of Russian intelligence and says, "We know what you're up to. You better stop it." He did it again later in August. And then President Obama talked to President Putin in September and said, "We know what you're up to. You better cut it out. Those folks better cut it out." So they go and confront the Russians, who clearly are the bad guys, and they won't go and talk to the campaigns and say, what this is about. And second, the FBI, while pretending to brief Trump, actually used it as an opportunity to spy on him. Quote, "The only counterintelligence work done in this briefing was not on behalf or in defense of the Trump campaign, but was actually gathering intelligence against the Trump campaign." Did they ever try to protect Donald Trump from foreign influence? Graham asked. They did not brief him, Horowitz said. As a matter of fact, whenever they went in and gave him a vanilla briefing, the Russians are out there, you better beware. Didn't they have an FBI agent do a 302 on the defensive briefing itself? Graham asked. They sent one of the supervisory agents from Crossfire Hurricane team to the briefing, and that agent prepared a report to the file of the briefing, Horowitz said. A 302 is an FBI form used to report or summarize the interviews that they conduct as part of an investigation. So the FBI defensive briefing the agency said they provided to the Trump campaign was not a defensive briefing at all, but rather an information-gathering interview for the agents surveilling those associated with the Trump campaign. Yep, no bias there. It's just coincidence that all the errors were harmful to Trump. And so that's the end of the article. It's great to see, intelligent liberals like Jimmy Dore coming out and sharing this information, because, at a certain point, it's a little scary to think there's all these schizophrenic Democrats out there believing things that are so far removed from reality and actually being encouraged and coddled by these people in the mainstream media, these CNN anchors and, basically MSNBC, just, conspiracy theorist lesbians, right? It's at what point does the whole thing break down, right? I mean, because at this point, the Mueller thing was a dud, right? We now got Horowitz. Does it end with Durham and criminal charges, right? When half of these people are in jail for their criminal malfeasance, is that when all of a sudden people will start waking up? I don't know, because they're so far asleep. Again, all you can do is point and laugh and share the truth. So on that's my video today. Hope you guys are having a good one. Leave a comment down below and hit the like button. Share it as far as wide as you can if you enjoyed the video. And I'll see you next time. Cheers.
I